1. The fatal crash on the Pune highway. So, for a woman named Meera, this absolute nightmare starts with a late-night call from the local police out in Pune, India. And the details of this crash, they left absolutely no room for ambiguity. It happened on a pitch-black stretch of highway just outside the city limits. Law enforcement described the wreckage as just brutal. They confirmed to Meera right then and there that the impact was so severe, nobody could have possibly survived. The stark, undeniable reality here is that Meera's husband, Raj, was killed in that wreckage.
Shocked, completely heartbroken, and suddenly trying to navigate a world without her partner, Meera went home, alone. She walked into this incredibly quiet, empty apartment, surrounded by that sudden, heavy isolation that always follows such a profound tragedy.
Let's track the timeline of that evening. We have the fatal crash hours prior. Then, late that night, Meera returns to her empty apartment. And then we hit 1:13 a.m., the exact moment the voice note arrives. And it's this timeline that really highlights the sheer physical impossibility of what happens next. Which brings us to part 2, the 1:13 a.m. message, a true digital anomaly. 1:13 a.m. It's at this exact minute that the suffocating silence of Meera's apartment was broken. Her phone suddenly vibrates on the table, a WhatsApp notification, a voice note. And the sender? It was Raj's number.
And here is the completely impossible digital footprint. That message, it was sent 3 hours after his death. Let that sink in. It originated from the device of a man whose body had just been pulled from a completely mangled car wreck 3 hours prior.
Now let's break down the actual audio file Meera listened to while her hands were literally trembling. The analysis of this recording shows a really distinct, frankly terrifying progression. First, there's just heavy static. Then, cutting through that noise, is Raj's voice. But he isn't just speaking normally, he's whispering, and he sounds absolutely terrified. Right underneath his voice, this loud, echoing banging starts up in the background, and then, just sudden screaming. But the most chilling piece of data here? It's exactly what he whispered through the static right before that screaming started. He said, "Meera, don't open the bedroom door."
Completely frozen with fear, she slowly turns to look at her bedroom. And the door? It was slightly open. Now that's a terrifying detail on its own, but it's even worse when you consider that Meera explicitly remembered locking that specific door when she got home.
This is where the tension leaps right out of the digital world and into physical reality. Because right then, someone knocked from inside that room. Just one, agonizingly slow knock. Then, another. The very real sound of a physical presence inside a locked, supposedly empty bedroom. Moving on to part 3, the investigation and law enforcement's response.
Of course, Meera immediately called the cops. But when officers actually breached the apartment to secure the scene, their initial sweep turned up absolutely nothing. There was no one inside, no signs of forced entry, zero traditional physical evidence whatsoever. The apartment was exactly as empty as when Meera first unlocked the front door. Well, at least at first glance.
Because right as they were getting ready to pack up, one of the officers noticed this horrifying anomaly on the floorboards, something that completely disrupted the logic of this empty apartment. There were wet footprints leading directly out of that supposedly empty bedroom, straight to where Meera's phone had been. Yes, the exact same phone that had just received Raj's impossible voice note. So the physical evidence, these wet footprints, had just perfectly bridged the gap to the digital anomaly. Something physical, something real, had stood right over her device. And if that wasn't enough, the police made an even more terrifying discovery when they went back to recheck the highway accident report. Raj's phone had never actually been recovered from the crash site. Think about that. The device sending these messages was completely missing in the physical world, yet it was actively transmitting in the digital one. This brings us to part 4, the final recording, the very next night. 1:13 a.m. The exact same minute strikes again. The dead quiet of the apartment is completely shattered once more. And with it comes a second, arguably even more terrifying voice note sent directly to Meera's phone. Only this time, there was no static, no screaming. The entire message was just 5 words, delivered with this chilling, absolute finality right before the call disconnected. "He's standing behind you now." And the immediate aftermath of that message spilled right out beyond Meera's walls.
Neighbors later told the police they heard Meera let out an absolute blood-curdling scream that night. Whatever this was, the terror had escalated from a digital message into a very real, very physical confrontation.
When the police rushed back following frantic calls from the neighbors, they breached the door once again. But the apartment was completely empty. Meera was just gone. The only single thing left behind was her phone, lying abandoned on the cold floorboards. And the most unsettling part? The phone was still recording.
Which leaves us, as we wrap up this explainer, looking at a set of facts that absolutely refuse to align with reality. Let's recap. Raj is dead. His phone is missing. Meera has completely vanished. We have the data, we have the timeline, and we have the audio. But the one piece of this puzzle we don't have, the deeply unsettling question that's going to be ringing in our ears for a long time, is who is holding Raj's phone?